I don't care what income bracket you are in. Doesn't make you immune from being cheated on. This story has 4 updates. Found out my wife secretly wanted an open relationship and already cheated. I divorced her and exposed her. Let's go. Last night shattered my reality in ways I never imagined possible. I'm a commercial airline pilot, and we had a mechanical issue with one of our engines during the pre-flight check in Denver. After 2 hours of maintenance crews trying to resolve the issue, they declared the aircraft unfit to fly, and all passengers were rebooked on later flights. This meant I was heading home at 2 a.m. instead of starting my usual red-eye to Seattle. The first sign something was wrong was the unfamiliar black Audi parked 2 houses down, facing the wrong direction. In our quiet suburban neighborhood, we know every car, and this one stood out. I initially brushed it off, probably someone visiting the new neighbors. Walking up to our front door, I noticed soft music playing inside. Not unusual, since my wife often edits photos late into the night for her magazine assignments. What caught my attention was how quickly the music stopped when I put my key in the lock. The house was pitch dark, except for a faint glow from our home office upstairs. 2 wine glasses sat in the kitchen sink. One had a distinct lipstick mark, the same shade my wife had started wearing recently. The other had lingering traces of what looked like another set of lips on the other glass. An unfamiliar leather jacket was draped over our couch. Definitely men's. Definitely not mine. My footsteps seemed impossibly loud on our wooden stairs. Each step felt like an eternity. The office door was closed, but I could hear hurried whispers and what sounded like drawers closing. When I opened the door, I found my wife working at her computer, fully dressed but noticeably disheveled. Her lipstick was smudged. "You're home early," she said, trying to sound casual while frantically clicking through windows on her screen. The flight got canceled. The bathroom window was open, curtains swaying in the night breeze. In our second-floor bathroom, in February, yep, seemed a little suspicious to me. I walked over and looked out just in time to see a man rushing to the black Audi. Even from above, I recognized him, the new senior photographer from the magazine my wife freelanced for. He'd been at our house twice for project planning sessions. The next hour was a blur of denials, then excuses, then a shocking confession that left me reeling. She'd been exploring polyamory with him for months, had joined online groups about ethical non-monogamy. Apparently, they'd been planning to approach me about opening up our marriage once she felt the timing was right. The timing being after she'd already started sleeping with him. Her iPad, which she'd forgotten to close in her panic, showed months of messages between them, planning meetups, sharing explicit photos, discussing how to convince me that opening our marriage was a good idea. Some messages went back nearly 6 months. 7 years together, 4 years of marriage, all destroyed because she couldn't have a conversation before jumping into bed with someone else. I grabbed my flight bag, which still had 3 days of clothes from my planned Seattle trip. The last thing I heard as I walked out was her saying this wasn't how she wanted me to find out. Like there's ever a good way to discover your spouse is cheating. I'm writing this from a hotel near the airport. My phone keeps lighting up with her messages, each one making less sense than the last. Something about how polyamory is natural, how marriage shouldn't mean ownership, how she still loves me but needs to explore her full self. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. Tonight, I'm trying to figure out how 7 years of trust disappeared in 7 minutes. A lot of people have asked about our history, so here's the background that makes this whole situation even more surreal. My wife and I crossed paths at a charity event for Angel Flight, where volunteer pilots provide free medical transportation. I was a newly certified commercial pilot, volunteering my off days. She was documenting the event for a local paper, back when she was still building her portfolio. We bonded over aviation, not just the flying, but the whole culture of it. She'd grown up around small airports because her dad was a flight instructor, and she had this way of capturing the soul of aviation in her photos that just clicked with me. Within 6 months, she'd landed her first major gig with a prestigious travel magazine. I still remember her excitement when they signed her on as a regular contributor. Her career took off like a rocket. Magazine covers, international assignments, photo exhibitions. I was genuinely proud watching her succeed, even when it meant long stretches apart due to our schedules. The irony is our careers meshed perfectly. When she had shoots in Asia or Europe, I could often bid for routes that would sync up with her schedule. We'd steal extra days in Tokyo, Paris, or Singapore. It became our thing, meeting up in random cities, exploring together whenever our jobs aligned. We even got married in Iceland because we both had assignments there that lined up perfectly. Last year, everything seemed to be falling into place. I made captain on the A320, giving me more control over my schedule. She landed a contract as lead photographer for a major adventure travel magazine. We bought our house, started talking about kids, even picked out names. Looking back, that's when things began to shift, though I didn't see it then. The changes were subtle at first. She started taking more local assignments instead of international ones, said she wanted to build a stronger local network, started attending these photography workshops and industry meetups. That's where she met him, this hotshot photographer who just moved from the West Coast to become the magazine's senior photographic editor. I remember the first time he came to our house for what she called a portfolio review, brought expensive wine, talked about his gallery showings in LA, his views on artistic freedom and breaking conventional boundaries. I found him pretentious, but kept quiet. After all, he was essentially my wife's boss. The second red flag was her sudden interest in redefining relationship paradigms. She started following all these polyamory accounts on Instagram, reading books about ethical non-monogamy. When I asked about it, she said it was research for a documentary project about modern relationships she was planning to pitch. Now I realize I missed so many warning signs: the late-night emergency editing sessions, the new wardrobe that seemed more suited for cocktail bars than photo shoots, the way she started keeping her phone face down, her growing dismissiveness of our shared future plans. The final piece I discovered: after that night, she'd opened a separate credit card 3 months ago. The statements show hotel charges, expensive restaurants, even a weekend spa retreat. All the while, I thought she was on assignment. She didn't just betray our marriage, she orchestrated an entire alternate life. 7 years of what I thought was a perfect partnership, built on shared passions and mutual support, now feels like an elaborate photo shoot, carefully staged to hide what was really happening behind the scenes. Looking back at the months before that night, there were signs I either ignored or rationalized away. It's amazing how the mind can blur red flags into rose-colored wishes when you trust someone completely. December was when things really started shifting. My wife began a new fitness obsession, hitting the gym at odd hours, not just regular workouts. She joined some exclusive boutique studio downtown that cost more than our car payment. When I mentioned the expense, she said it was investing in her brand, since she photographed fitness personalities sometimes. The studio had these late-night wellness workshops that kept her out until 10 or 11 p.m. Twice a week became 3 times, then 4. Once I dropped by to surprise her with dinner after my flight. The studio was dark and locked. Her location sharing showed her there, but when I called, she said she was networking at a nearby coffee shop with other members. The next day, She turned off her location sharing, saying her phone was acting up. January brought a complete wardrobe overhaul. Out went her practical photography gear, replaced by designer outfits that seemed excessive for someone who spends most workdays crouching behind a camera. She dropped $2,000 on a single shopping trip, saying the magazine wanted their photographers to embody a more upscale image. Our joint credit card got declined at Costco. Apparently, she'd maxed it out on clothes and some spa membership I knew nothing about. When I logged into our account, I found dozens of charges from restaurants I'd never heard of, always for 2 people, always on nights I was flying. Her phone became a fortress. She changed the passcode, started using her thumbprint only, always kept it face down, took it everywhere, even to the shower. I guess it's waterproof. The final straw was catching her deleting messages one night. She said she was cleaning up storage space at 3:19 a.m. Our intimacy vanished. Every time I tried initiating, there was a headache, a deadline, an early morning shoot. Yet, she was buying expensive lingerie, found the receipts in her car. When I asked about it, she said it was for an upcoming boudoir photography project. She'd never shot boudoir before. The social media shifts were subtle but telling. She untagged herself from our photos together, started posting solo shots with cryptic captions about personal growth and embracing change. Her Instagram stories showed up at art galleries and wine bars on nights she was supposedly editing at home. Family events became optional to her. She missed my niece's birthday, claiming an emergency shoot. Later, saw photos of her at some rooftop bar downtown on another photographer's social media. When I asked about it, she gaslit me, said it was an old photo, that I was being paranoid. 2 weeks before that night, I overheard her on the phone in our garage. She was laughing, that specific laugh she used to have with me. When she saw me, she jumped and ended the call mid-sentence, said it was a client discussing a pregnancy photo shoot. We both knew she didn't do pregnancy photography. The worst part, she started leaving her wedding ring at home during shoots, said she was afraid of scratching the lens filters, the same ring she used to refuse to take off even for swimming. Everything changed, yet nothing specific seemed conclusive. Each incident had a plausible explanation, wrapped in layers of half-truths and professional justifications. It was like watching a photo slowly develop, but not wanting to admit what the image was revealing. Then came that canceled flight and my early return home. Suddenly, all these puzzle pieces clicked together into a picture I never wanted to see. The hours following my walkout became a crash course in just how deep this deception went. From my airport hotel room, I started digging. Her iPad was still connected to her iCloud, something she'd obviously forgotten in her panic. What I found made me physically sick. Hundreds of messages between them going back months. Photos I wish I would have never seen. Detailed plans about their meetups, coordinated perfectly with my flight schedule. 2 a.m. sleep impossible. I discovered their shared Instagram account. Adventures in love, documenting their secret trips together through artsy photos and philosophical quotes about breaking free from societal constraints. Some of these photos were taken in our house, in our bedroom, while I was flying across the country. By sunrise, I'd found the credit card statements, 3-hour business lunches at upscale restaurants, weekend photography workshops that were actually romantic getaways, hotel charges in cities where I had layovers. They were meeting up in the same cities I was flying to, probably laughing about it the whole time. The real gut punch, a draft email to me, never sent, where they planned to suggest opening our marriage. They'd outlined their whole script, how they'd present it as my wife's journey of self-discovery, how her affair partner would later, coincidentally, express interest. They'd planned to manipulate me into accepting their relationship after the fact. Around 6 a.m., a message from an unknown number hit my phone. It was his wife. Turns out I wasn't the only one being deceived. She'd suspected something for weeks, hired a PI who photographed them together. She'd been building her case quietly, gathering evidence for her own divorce. My wife's messages kept coming, first angry that I'd invaded her privacy by accessing her iPad, then defensive about how polyamory is a valid lifestyle choice. Finally, desperate attempts to convince me that she'd always planned to tell me, and this was just bad timing. I blocked her number. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in a divorce lawyer's office. He called it one of the most well-documented cases of infidelity he'd seen, suggested filing for divorce immediately, advised me to document everything, and told me something interesting. Do not freeze joint bank accounts. If she can't get access to it, it may harm me in the divorce, and prepare for turbulence. My next stop was the bank. Separated our accounts, canceled joint credit cards, transferred my direct deposits. Back at the hotel, emails started arriving from her family. Her sister was horrified, said she'd had suspicions but kept quiet to avoid causing drama. Her father, the former flight instructor who'd first sparked her interest in aviation, wrote a heartfelt apology. The magazine's HR department received anonymous evidence of their relationship, probably from his wife. Both of them were reprimanded. The industry they'd used as cover for their affair was now turning against them. My wife's carefully curated world of deception collapsed like a house of cards. All her sophisticated plans for manipulating me into accepting their affair fell apart because of one canceled flight. By nightfall, I'd retained a lawyer, filed for divorce, and booked a corporate apartment. The next morning, I'd have to face my crew and fly a full schedule, pretending my world hadn't just imploded. But for now, I sat in my hotel room, watching planes take off into the dark sky, realizing some pilots weren't the only ones living a double life. First update, 3 weeks after discovery. These past 3 weeks have been a whirlwind of legal meetings, evidence gathering, and unexpected revelations. The divorce papers landed on her desk at the magazine. Well, her former desk. Their suspension turned into termination after other staff members came forward with stories about their inappropriate behavior during photo shoots. Apparently, they'd been using actual work assignments as cover for their meetups, billing the magazine for hotel stays and equipment rentals that were never used for photography. My lawyer couldn't believe the trail of evidence they left behind. Between the shared Instagram account, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and their detailed messages, we had what he called an airtight case. The icing on the cake, they documented their affair through artistic photographs, time-stamped and geotagged, practically creating an illustrated timeline of their deception. My soon-to-be ex hasn't taken the divorce filing well. She showed up at my corporate apartment unannounced, somehow sweet-talked her way past security. To this day, I don't know how she found me. I didn't tell her anything. Started throwing around words like soulmates and artistic connection. Said I was punishing her for being honest about her needs. Conveniently forgot the part where her honesty came after getting caught. Security escorted her out. His wife reached out again. She's a forensic accountant of all things. Found a pattern of expensive gifts charged to the magazine's expense account, camera gear that was really jewelry, professional reference books that were actually weekend getaways. Meanwhile, the photography community's rumor mill is running overtime. Their artistic collaboration became industry gossip after someone leaked their private Instagram to several major photography groups. Clients are canceling contracts. Their creative partnership is toxic property now. My wife's latest strategy? Playing victim on social media. Posted a vague message about persecution for following her heart, and the outdated constraints of traditional relationships. The comments weren't sympathetic, especially after several industry colleagues called her out for unprofessional behavior and breach of ethics. Her affair partner's response? Total radio silence. Deleted all his social media, changed his phone number. According to his wife, he's suddenly interested in working on their marriage now that his career's imploding. My wife found out through industry gossip. Her messages switched from declarations of undying love to bitter accusations of abandonment. I've moved most of my stuff into the corporate apartment. Coming home between flights actually feels peaceful now. No more checking for strange cars or unexplained receipts. No more gut feelings that something's wrong but not being able to prove it. The divorce proceeds on schedule. Each revelation strengthens our case. My lawyer says her attempts to contact me actually helped document harassment. Every message about misunderstanding her journey or accepting love's many forms goes straight to the evidence file. My crew's been solid through all this. Changed my flight schedule to avoid layovers in cities where they might be. Other pilots cover my routes when I need time for legal meetings. The aviation community takes care of its own. Next week, we start dividing assets. She's already trying to claim she needs the house for her home studio. Funny how she never mentioned the studio during all those hotel meetups. The judge will love that one. Second update, 6-week post-discovery. What a difference a month makes. Remember that whole polyamory is natural speech she kept pushing? Turns out they were not exactly following the ethical part of ethical non-monogamy. His wife found their secret chat group, not just messages between them, but an entire community of industry photographers sharing tips on hiding affairs, hotel recommendations, fake business events, editing metadata on photos to change locations. They had systems for everything. Some even bragged about using company resources to fund their adventures. Several magazine executives were part of this group. Explains why they got away with it for so long. The magazine's parent company launched a massive investigation. 5 senior staff members suspended. 3 major advertisers pulled out. Their legal teams going through years of expense reports with a fine-toothed comb. Speaking of legal matters, our divorce proceedings revealed some interesting financials. Remember those emergency editing sessions? She charged over $15,000 in professional development expenses to our joint account. Spa weekends, luxury hotels, designer clothes, all classified as business expenses. Her family's completely turned against her. Her father, who built his whole career on trust and integrity in aviation, can't even look at her. Her sister sent me screenshots of conversations where my wife bragged about living her best life while I was flying across the country. Even her mother, who initially tried to play peacemaker, stopped defending her after seeing the evidence. The photography community's imploding. Her affair partner threw her under the bus spectacularly, claimed she initiated everything, said she pressured him into expense fraud, wrote this long apology email to his wife, copied to HR, blaming my wife for manipulating him. Real stand-up guy. My wife's response? Showed up drunk at his house, caused such a scene his neighbors called police. His wife's become an unexpected ally. Her forensic accounting skills uncovered a whole network of financial deception. Joint accounts we didn't know about, hidden credit cards, even a rental storage unit filled with expensive camera gear bought with company money. The house is being sold. Market's good, should close next month. My wife tried claiming she needed it for her professional studio. Judge wasn't impressed, especially after seeing those Instagram photos using our bedroom for definitely non-professional activities. My crew started joking about making our route a drama-free zone. Even made a mock safety checklist. Engines, check. Navigation, check. Toxic X's, negative. Aviation humor helps. Third, update. 9 weeks post-discovery. 9 weeks. Feels like 9 years. Major developments on multiple fronts, and each one validates my decision to walk away that night. My wife's career in professional photography, done. Not just locally, nationally. 3 major photography associations revoked her memberships. Galleries removed her work. Even her old newspaper clips disappeared from their online archives. She tried launching a personal photography blog, but the internet has a long memory. Every post gets flooded with comments about professional ethics. Her affair partner's life imploded spectacularly. A lease on a downtown apartment I never knew about. Each discovery strengthens my case and weakens her attempts to claim alimony. The aviation side of my life has been my sanctuary. Now I'm training other pilots, teaching them about more than just flying. Integrity, responsibility, the weight of people's trust. Lessons I learned the hard way. Got an unexpected call from her father recently. He's retiring from flight instruction, wanted me to take some of his long-term students, said he'd rather keep them in the aviation family, meaning me, not his daughter. That hit her hard, according to her sister. The corporate apartment's gone. Bought my own place near the airport. Modern, minimal, no dark corners or hidden surprises. His wife's case is proceeding faster than mine. She found evidence he'd done this before in California. 2 previous marriages, 2 previous affairs with coworkers. My wife didn't know. Her face in court when this came out was almost worth the price of admission, almost. The industry fallout continues spreading. 2 more secret chat groups exposed. My wife's latest strategy, playing reformed center, started posting about learning from mistakes and the price of authenticity, until someone leaked screenshots of her new dating profile, created 2 weeks after discovery, describing herself as ethically non-monogamous. She still doesn't get it. Therapy's been solid. Found a counselor who specializes in betrayal trauma, happens to be a private pilot himself. He gets the unique pressures of aviation life, helps me process things between flights. No psychobabble, just straight talk about moving forward. Final update, 9 months post-discovery. 9 months since that canceled flight changed everything. The divorce finalized yesterday. The magazine industry is still dealing with aftershocks. The house sold without any issues. Judge denied her attempt to claim half my pension, citing the documented misuse of marital funds. Her lawyer quit after she tried submitting doctored expense reports as evidence. Their attempt at dating openly lasted exactly 17 days. He moved in with her right after his wife kicked him out. They documented their brave new chapter on social media. 2 weeks later, she caught him using their joint account to meet other photographers. Her professional reinvention attempts keep backfiring. Attempted freelancing under her maiden name, but Google exists. Even tried becoming an authenticity coach on Instagram. The comment section was brutal. The aviation community proved itself solid gold. His wife's doing great. Used her forensic accounting skills to start a consulting business helping companies prevent expense fraud. She's already got 3 major publishing houses as clients, living her best revenge by turning their schemes into case studies. My new place feels like home. Photos from my travels cover the walls, real ones I took myself, not staged artistic shots. Started a photography club for pilots. We shared genuine moments captured during layovers. Last week, my ex tried one final manipulation. Sent a 12-page letter about growth through adversity and finding authentic love. Included photographs from our marriage, edited to look more artistic. Even quoted philosophers about forgiveness. I took them to my backyard and burned them. Looking back, that canceled flight was the best mechanical failure of my career. Could have spent years at cruising altitude while she lived her double life on the ground. Instead, that unscheduled landing led to the truth.